Hello, it's been a while. I've been traveling, I've been enjoying the summer, and now I'm a little sick, so sorry about my voice. But I've intentionally been staying away from politics and movie discourse for a couple of months. I actually think that's healthy. If you're anything like me and you follow politics, culture, movies, it's really easy to become so invested in everybody else's lives that you stop living your own. You wake up, check your phone, get mad about something someone said on social media, watch 3 YouTube videos telling you why the world's ending, and suddenly you've forgotten to enjoy your own life. So I took a break. And coming back, I thought I'd check in on something I'd genuinely been excited about, and that's Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Now, this story has a bit of a history with me. Years ago, back when bookstores still existed, I picked up one of those giant collections of Greek mythology. I wasn't looking for Homer, I was just fascinated by how wonderfully bizarre Greek mythology was. Eventually I read the Iliad and then the Odyssey. Well, sort of. I also needed the Coles Notes version afterwards because, let's be honest, Homer isn't exactly light reading. But I love the Odyssey. It's an epic, it's strange, it's tragic, it's funny, it's imaginative in a way that almost nothing else is. So when I saw Christopher Nolan's trailer in the theaters, I got excited, but I was also a little worried because my first thought, well, it wasn't what's the political message or who's playing who. My first thought was actually like, how the hell are they gonna fit the Odyssey into one movie? I mean, Hollywood can just drive me crazy sometimes because they looked at The Hobbit and somehow decided it needed 3 movies. Then they look at one of the greatest epic journeys ever written and thought, nah, we got this in 1. I mean, good luck, I guess. I mean, from the trailer, it really does look like Nolan is going to try and tell the whole story. So that worries me, but it also excites me. Because if anyone is crazy enough to try it, it's probably Christopher Nolan. Now, whether you love Nolan or hate him, I think there's one thing that's hard to argue. He's a filmmaker. Sometimes he makes movies I absolutely love, and sometimes he makes movies that leave me scratching my head and wondering what on earth he was thinking. But they always feel like his movies. They feel like someone trying to make something, trying to create something, trying to make art. So after seeing the trailer, I went looking for more information. And instead, I found outrage. My YouTube homepage, when I got back to it, was full of thumbnails telling me this movie was already ruined. It was already woke. It had already failed. And that's why I'm making this video. Not because I think Christopher Nolan is incapable of making a bad movie. He absolutely is. Not because I think every creative decision he's made is automatically brilliant. It isn't. I'm making this video because I think we've become addicted to reviewing movies before they exist. We've replaced experiencing art with predicting whether we'll hate it. And I think that's a shame, because movies are a strange thing. Yes, they're products, they're expensive, they're made by giant Hollywood studios, they're trying to make money, all of that's true. But they're also works of art, and artists are supposed to make choices. Some of those choices are going to work, some of them are going to fail spectacularly. That's part of making art. You don't have to like every decision an artist makes, you don't even have to watch the movie. But I do think we should let the artist actually finish the painting before we decide we hate it. Now, one of the biggest criticisms I've seen is race swapping and gender swapping. That's evident in the trailer. Now, here's where I might surprise some people. Sometimes I actually understand that criticism. If you're making a historical drama that's trying to faithfully recreate a real place and time, and you make casting decisions purely to make a modern political point or something like that, I understand why people find that distracting. And the reason has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with immersion. I think one of the most important jobs of a filmmaker is immersion. When I sit down in a theater, I want to disappear into another world. I want to forget about work and bills and politics for 2 or 3 hours, or 500 hours, or however long this movie has to be. I think it's 3. I want to believe the world the filmmaker is creating. The quickest way to pull me out of that experience is to remind me that I'm watching actors on a set. So yes, if a creative decision genuinely breaks immersion, that's a fair criticism in my books. But here's where I think that criticism stops applying. The Odyssey isn't trying to recreate history. It's literally mythology, and mythology has never been fixed. These stories existed as oral traditions for generations before they were ever even written down. Different storytellers told them differently. Later Greek writers expanded them. Roman writers adapted them. Some of the most famous details people associate with Greek mythology today weren't even part of Homer's original poems. It's very funny that people think that these stories should be done a certain way. Let's look at Helen of Troy, for example. People are getting upset because she's being played by a black actress. Really? Well, let's talk about Helen of Troy for a second. In the broader Greek myths, Helen is the daughter of Zeus. After Zeus disguises himself as a swan and seduces, or in some version assaults, Helen's mother. Helen then hatches from an egg. That's the mythology. Would we blame a film creator for maybe leaving that part out of a Helen of Troy story? I don't think so. And if we're perfectly happy accepting gods, cyclops, sea monsters, witches, and babies hatching from eggs, why is a black Helen of Troy where our imagination finally throws up its hands? Is that the line? I don't buy it. And by the way, the actress they've cast is actually quite fantastic. If you enjoy indie horror films or dark comedies, it's more of a dark comedy, and you've never seen the Australian film Little Monsters, you should go watch it. It's one of my favorite horror comedies, and she is excellent in it. Anyways, I think we should judge the performance after you've seen the performance. Now, another criticism that I actually sympathize with a lot more is, why aren't there more Greek actors in this film? That's a fair question. I completely understand why Greeks would love to see more Greek actors telling Greek stories. Hollywood has been doing this forever. Colin Farrell, who's Irish, played Alexander the Great. British actors play Americans all the time. Americans play British people with varying degrees of success at the accents. It's hardly new. Would it have been nice to see more Greek actors? Sure. But Christopher Nolan is also famous for working with actors he trusts. And let's be honest, a cast full of recognizable names also makes studios a lot more comfortable handing you hundreds of millions of dollars to make your movie. Is that the ideal system? Maybe not. But I also don't think it's enough to convince me a movie has already failed. And then there's Elliot Page. This one frustrates me, because I think there are two completely different conversations happening. One is about casting, the other is about people simply being uncomfortable with a trans actor. Those aren't the same thing. Now, if Elliot Page turns out to be playing some unstoppable Greek warrior who physically dominates everyone, I might think that's a strange casting choice myself. Physicality matters. Sometimes it really does. A filmmaker still has to convince me what I'm seeing makes sense within the world they've created. But the thing is, I don't even know who Elliot Page is playing. I intentionally haven't looked it up. I want to go into this movie fresh, which means I've learned almost nothing about his actual role. I've only learned that people are angry he's in it. Christopher Nolan has worked with Elliot Page before. He knows he can act. I've thought Elliot Page was a terrific actor since long before he transitioned. Maybe Nolan wanted to work with someone talented again. Is that really so hard to believe? If the movie comes out and I think the casting doesn't work, I'll say so. But at least let's watch the movie first. That's all I'm asking. Maybe Christopher Nolan completely misses the mark. Maybe trying to squeeze the Odyssey into one film is a terrible idea. It honestly might be. I just wish they'd bring back that old school official intermission in the middle of these things. I know I am over 40 and my bladder would just really love that. At any rate, I don't want YouTube deciding how I feel before I even buy a ticket. When those theater lights go down, I don't want culture war. I don't want algorithms. I don't want outraged thumbnails sitting on my shoulder whispering what I'm supposed to think. I want Christopher Nolan to tell me a story. His version. Not Homer's, not the Romans, not somebody else's YouTube review. his. And when the credits roll, I'll decide whether I loved it, whether I hated it, or whether it landed somewhere in between. I'll definitely make a first impressions video either way. Because that's what going to the movies used to be, and I kind of miss that.